Happy Halloween.
It's an absurd holiday.
Oh yes, putting on costumes and striking fear. Quite absurd.
All it takes is one bad day.
You've eaten Gotham's wealth, its spirit, but your feast is nearly over.
This is not my home. It's an operating table. And I'm the surgeon. Why aren't you laughing?
From this moment on, none of you are safe.
Welcome to the Batman Book Club, a podcast exploring the Dark Knight Library. I am your host, Ryan Lauer. The Batman Book Club is a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network, hosted by Batman on Film. Just go to batmanonfilm.com, click on podcasts, and you'll find the Batman Podcast Network. That has a whole list of other Bat-related shows that also like to dive into other nerdy subjects we all love to frolic about in our free time. Batman Book Club is also on Patreon. If you like what's going on with the show and you want to help support the show, keep the generator running in the Wayne Manor study, just go to patreon.com/thebatmanbc. Now, thank you for listening to episode 124, Moon of the Wolf. That's right. It's the kickoff to now the third annual Spooky Month celebration here on the Batman Book Club. And joining me, he's no stranger. When I think of spooky season and horror, I think of this guy. He's the biggest fan of the genre. He's been here 2 years before. He's been here a lot over a while. He is the proud papa of one Brian Powers. He is the host of the Batman on Film podcast, and he's basically a fantasy football phantom. It's one Garret Grev. Garret, welcome back to the Batman Book Club.
Ooh, it's spooky Garret season.
See? Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
That's what I'm known for. People are like, that dude's intense. He likes the creepiest, scariest, weirdest, goriest horror. Yeah. That's just how that dude gets down.
How does this guy have 5 children?
Yeah,
I don't understand.
Yeah, with an incredible age range. You know, that guy was active. he was an adventurous youth, apparently. No, of course I am. I am not those things. I am the guy that comes on, and you were a gentleman for selecting this or suggesting it for me. When I come on to talk Halloween episodes or issues for episodes of the podcast, I get something like Spooky Gotham or Little Gotham, the Halloween.
Little Gotham.
Little Gotham, the Halloween issue. Why? Because I'm a big baby. I don't like all this scary stuff. I hear you guys, you like your horror, and Nico Caruso likes his weirdo A24, whatever studio the artsy kids are into style horror stuff. And I'm just like, I like Scream. That's a fun one for me. The first couple, I've watched the show. I heard there's a show, I Know What You Did Last Summers. And then like The Nightmare Before Christmas. That's my, or Charlie Brown. Range. Give me the Garfield animated specials. Give me the Charlie Brown animated special. Give me the family fare, and then maybe a couple 90s teen slashers that aren't, because it's not like the body mutilation stuff. Yeah. You know me. We've gotten into it. But I do like quite a bit the subject of the comic we're talking about today. I've always been a fan of this particular spooky Halloween-y type monster.
Yeah. I'm glad that you agreed to come back. I don't think you hesitated when I said, would you still like to be involved in the spooky month? And you're like, absolutely.
Oh my gosh. I got to get my numbers up. There are people that are starting to like come close to of course, Peter's way out in front, right? But I've always considered myself as like, I'm the number 2.
Behind Pete.
Right.
I think you are.
But if you're behind Pete, I mean, that's like being number 1 for all intents and purposes. Sure. Like that guy's got a monthly co-host gig.
Basically a co-host.
At this point. Right. So then really the number 1 guest is me, and I got to maintain that spot.
It's really funny because last time you were on the show, you had to follow up Lee Bermejo.
Oh yeah.
And then it's almost like it can't be a bigger challenge than that, right? You're following Peter Arvera.
Sure.
The basic co-host, the associate producer of the Batman Book Club.
Right.
Peter
Right.
Arvera. So no pressure here.
I'm a competitive guy. I take challenges and I run with them. It's just kind of what I do. So that's fine. It's like,
Yes.
yeah, Lee Bermejo, dad on Twitter that talks about Batman and football a lot. Okay, sure. That's about the same thing.
Yeah, brings it. Okay, well, I'm glad that the story that we have here is fitting for such a grand challenge. So let's not wait any further. Let's dive into Moon of the Wolf. Now, this story was actually featured in a 100-page spectacular in Batman issue number 255. It was written by the great Len Wein, illustrated by the incomparable Neal Adams, RIP. Released in 1974. Of course, the issue was released physically. I envy you if you have that physical issue.
Oh boy.
It's available digitally. It's in some, like, it pops up in a variety of collected editions. It's on DC Universe Infinite, and those collected editions, of course, are all available on my favorite app of all time, Hoopla. Garrett, for this episode, which version did you read?
I was on the Infinite, as you like to say, DC Universe Infinite. You know, I don't get into the app maybe as much as I thought I would. And that's probably a little bit reflective of me just reading stuff that I own physically. Like, you know, I've got some time going to the trades. So it was actually a welcome. I felt like I was maybe getting a little bit of my money's worth by saying, oh, good, I have to find this one on DC.
I am forced to go Infinite.
Yeah, DCUI. So it was nice to be able to jump in there and find it and spend some time with the book. And then I just kind of kept going on that 100-page spectacular and read some of the reprint stories. Yeah, it was fun. It's great. It's a useful app. I need to make sure to carve out more time to utilize it, is what I mean to say.
Yeah. I actually am unfamiliar with the other stories included in that.
The first Batman? Thomas Wayne Batman? First Thomas Wayne Batman.
What's that reprinted from?
Gosh, hang on. Let me think. But the story is Batman and Robin are looking at Thomas Wayne's desk, and a secret compartment or something pops out, and in it is like a retro Batman costume, and they're like, what the heck is this? And it turns out Thomas Wayne wore this costume to it's not a Halloween ball, because I thought maybe we could just do a twofer on this. It's just a masquerade ball, and he dressed up as a bat, and Bruce is like, oh, as a young boy, I've unlocked this memory, I was fascinated by it, or whatever. And he was kidnapped from then this masquerade ball, and a criminal tried to force him to help him out with a gunshot wound. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you see in more modern comics, you know, from Thomas Wayne, Batman, and Flashpoint, and then the Long Halloween. Like, there's stuff in there. So if you get a chance, you got a little time on your hands, go back and revisit it. It's definitely, you know, a Silver Age Batman story. But there's modern stuff where you can see writers pick that one apart and got some goods out of it.
See, and I remember that one, like you saying, the first Batman and the Thomas Wayne and stuff in Lou Moxon, being in that story. And it says, I just looked really quick online, and it's I think Detective Comics 235.
There it is.
But is really explored. Man, I forget. I didn't buy this book, and now it's kind of expensive. Wayne of Gotham. It's kind of expensive to find in places right now, and that teeters back and forth between past and present. And the past really talks about this issue basically, and Thomas Wayne wearing that, and Lou Moxon and all that stuff. So that story seems really familiar. I just don't know where to read it.
as they call him.
Oh, Joey,
Joey, a ne'er-do-well, hired assassin, not necessarily a mugger. But yeah, that's included.
Sorry for my tangent there.
No,
we're not talking Moon of the Wolf.
But I tell you what, listeners, if you get a chance, it seems like kind of a silly little Silver Age story, and you know, to the modern audience, a lot of times we can kind of poo-poo the Silver Age stories because they were goofy and what if and silly Earth, whatever number. There's some stuff that shows up later. It's kind of fun to go back and see where some of that inspiration came from. So if you've got the app or you got the Hoopla, there you go.
Yeah. DC Universe Infinite. You can read the whole gamut. But as for me, I did a compare and contrast. So I actually read my Batman Illustrated by Neal Adams, volume 3, which is a lovely book that in hardcover. I think our own Peter Vera has all 3 of these, and I think they're signed by Neal Adams himself.
Yeah, he's met Neal at some.
Lucky boy.
He had met the late great Neal at a few conventions, so I think that sounds about right. I know he's got some signed merch from him.
Yeah, so this is obviously included in that volume 3, and then also I looked over because I'm like, wait, Len Wein, and I have the Tales of the Batman, Len Wein, over 600 pages. This is what I use to work out.
That's
keep the
girthy.
biceps.
Right.
Yes. And yeah, it's included. It's one of the first stories included in this as well. So yeah, those are the two versions I grabbed for this episode. Now, Garrett, do you happen to remember when the first time was that you read Moon of the Wolf?
Oh, I want to say it was later. I think I read it I think it was at college, actually. The Luther College, Go Decorah, Iowa library had quite a bit of comic books that you could check out
Nice.
and read. Like, yeah, it was pretty
Represent.
cool. Yeah. And of course, like, I'm looking for Batman anything, and I had never read the issue. I was aware of it, but at that time, there was no online apps, and online shopping was different. This would have been the mid 2000s, early 2000s. And I was aware of it because of the Batman the Animated Series episode, but I had never actually read the physical copy. So I got it, read it, and said, wow, this is fantastic. And Neal Adams, I had read a number of Neal Adams artwork, but like, the thing that comes back to me every single time is just how modern, for like, Neal changed comic book art in a way that still felt today, where if you showed this comic book to somebody that was sort of just generally aware of comics and asked them what year they thought it was from, besides some things that are a little bit time specific that you could pick out, like, this art feels so like fresh and modern still. Like, I couldn't tell you if this was 10 years old or 50 years old just by looking at it. But the time probably 20 years ago.
Nice. Mine was, I received this actually as a birthday present. So I think this was the Neal Adams, or Batman Illustrated by Neal Adams, volume 3, as a birthday present. Let's see, this one was, I think it was 2000. This is 2005. So it was like 2006 or 7. I feel like maybe 2007. And surprisingly, because for a reason that you just said, of a lack of, as I've said so many times here, a lack of comic availability growing up. At that point, I was starting to see comics, but I mean, obviously Moon of the Wolf, even in 2007, you can't get your hands on a Moon of the Wolf at that point. So when I got this, I blasted through this volume, and I think that's when I read Moon of the Wolf, in which that also was like, wait, hold on. Was this one based on the cartoon?
Yeah.
Because I was young and foolish at that point. And I was like, wait, no, dummy. This looks like it was 70s. So my first time reading probably was like 2007, which is kind of mind-blowing to me that I didn't catch on to this story until
late,
30 plus years later.
Well, and I wish I could remember what collected edition it was in, because it wasn't, it was before either of the collected editions that you have in your hands that the listeners can't see. But it was something like Batman through the 70s, or it was something a little bit more focused. They had little editions that were kind of decade specific.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yep. It was in that one.
Excellent. That was probably like my favorite kind of paper that stuff's printed on too. So
oh yeah.
The old time feel, and
library smelling paper.
Yeah.
Real
waiting on that
tactile.
Yankee Candle.
Yeah. You can hear the pages rub together. None of this slick, glossy sliding.
Yeah.
It was like the friction. If you turn the pages too fast, you could start a fire.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that it's a brilliant idea. I'm waiting for it. And then lastly, Garrett, why Moon of the Wolf?
Moon of the Wolf, because we were talking about Halloween issues and things that have Halloween related topics in it. And I'm a big werewolf fan. Like, of all the monsters, the werewolves as a kid was my favorite. I loved, we would go to the library and get old school like Universal monster movies and on VHS and like check them out and watch them around the Halloween season. And Lon Chaney, I can't remember, in Wolfman. Like that was a favorite, but what really made me a werewolf fan was Michael J. Fox in 1985's Teen Wolf.
Of course.
Like I was a Teen Wolf super fan. And I found it like later, right? Like I didn't see this thing when it came out, but as like an 8, 9, 10-year-old, Teen Wolf was one of my frequently played, movies on VHS. I think it might have been first grade, could have been second grade. I was Teen Wolf for Halloween, made out of a former Ewok costume and then a yellow basketball outfit with a werewolf makeup kit that my mom helped apply. And I was Teen Wolf, and I dribbled my basketball down the elementary school hall to the big gym where we did show off little, do the march, and the parents are in the stands watching. But I've always enjoyed werewolf. Jack Nicholson's Wolf is a movie I enjoy that apparently a lot of people don't. I like werewolves. I think they're fun. So this was kind of Batman and werewolves. Count me in.
Yeah. Wow. Garrett, I think that you and I need to have a marathon of werewolf movies now.
That would be great.
There's a lot.
There's a bunch that popped to mind.
Do you remember the teened version of an American Werewolf in Paris in the 90s with old Tom Everett Scott?
Tom Everett Scott of That Thing You Do fame.
Yes.
He is
by the Oneaters.
The Oneaters. He is also a fantasy football enthusiast.
Is he really?
Yeah.
No joke.
So I don't know.
Why isn't he doing these shows with us?
I don't know. I should reach out.
All the boxes.
Yeah, I should reach out and see if he wants to collab, as the kids say.
Collab. Also, That Thing You Do also to me put Steve Zahn on the map.
Steve Zahn, Minnesota treasure.
Fantastic. Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a second. It's all connected to you. I'm discovering this. Of everything is connected to Garret Grev.
It all comes back to Mr. Minnesota Nice, Garret Grev.
It sure does. Wow.
Yeah, Steve's on.
You're the monster of the Midway. Get out of here with that, Chicago Bears.
Steve's on Minnesota treasure, also beloved star of Saving Silverman. So and 8-Bit Christmas.
Yeah, God, two totally opposite performances, and he nailed them both.
Right. Yeah, he's a versatile man. And
my friend?
What's the Jeepers Creepers? Is he in that one?
He is not.
What's the truck driver one?
Oh, Joyride. Oh, that movie, that is good. That is a good one.
I liked that one.
Man, welcome to the Everything But a Batman comic book, Batman book club. My bad.
It's like 20 pages. You got to fill out the episode, right?
We were thinking like, oh, this would probably be a shorter podcast, and we'll be like hour 3. And be like, so hey, let's start talking about Moon of the Wolf. But werewolves, I mean, they're everywhere. It pops them in everything.
Twilight.
To get us back on track. Twilight, Robert Pattinson, the Batman.
It's all connected. It's all connected.
Man. Okay. So Moon of the Wolf. Let's talk about this.
Yes,
this issue because I think it is there's going to be blending of the animated episode with the book conversation. I just go back and forth a lot, and I feel like for some reason there's almost like an equal parts respectability of the story and then equal parts like, oh boy, this is a little jump in the shark sort of deal.
Sure.
And I always just took it as this is a Batman story in the Universal Monster Age. And it doesn't do anything too wild other than like it's a friggin' werewolf. Why not?
Right.
Bringing back, in which I don't remember them very well, bringing back good old Professor Milo, which it's set in here, which can you imagine like those days now in 1974 that you see this guy, and then it alludes into it of Professor Milo. Yeah, he's appeared in Detective 247 and Batman 112 in 1957. 17 years ago. He was in these two comics, and you're like, I'll never be able to read those. How will I ever get my hands on those to read those? And now we're very fortunate that we can go back and look at those. But what's scarier to you, a werewolf or Professor Milo's haircut?
Oh, Milo's haircut, man. Can you imagine? Like
Yeah,
it's just
definitely.
the straight up undercut with the bowl top. Remember,
Mhm.
like in the 90s, kids were doing the undercut thing, and then it was just kind of parted down in the middle, like some curtains. And then did you have one of those?
I was gonna say, I need to find a picture and show you, my friend. Oh
Yeah,
boy. And
yeah,
I
I
used to
had one.
think, I thought it was a bull, like an animal, Bull,
Oh
for
no,
the
no, no.
longest time. And I might have even misspelled that once in texting in our group. And you guys were like, I'm like,
Uh,
never mind. Okay.
BOWL, my man. Yeah,
That makes more sense.
it is bad because it's just straight across. It's like Lloyd Christmas, but like
Yeah.
way worse, you know? Like,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Good old Professor Milo. I mean, he is for fans of Batman, give them credit. The creator of that look. I mean, like I said, it was Detective Comics 247, in which if you hang on for just a moment, I can figure out who illustrated that. But coming up with the design, you created a character that everybody knows.
Right.
Sheldon Moldoff. Gee, you heard of him? And written by Bill Finger. So there you go. Of course.
Bill.
A character that will live on forever, instant recognizability. Also, because I think maybe even more so because of the animated series.
Oh, because they copy
a couple
paste.
appearances. Mhm.
Right. They brought
Still
it
has
right
that
over.
God awful haircut, because there's no way that you can have him and not do that haircut. But the story is actually, I mean, it's kind of simple in its sense of, I mean, and it kicks off right away of, a werewolf climbs the side of a building, attacks a woman who sicks her dog on him, and RIP that dog, Ralph.
Right.
Pretty much gets neck snapped right away.
Gone.
But Batman sees this. He intervenes. Wolf takes off. Batman saves the woman. Or he throws the woman out the window. Batman saves her. Wolf takes off. And then we hear about who this guy is. He's an Olympian.
Well,
Anthony
at first,
Lupus.
Batman presumes this is just a robber wearing a mask, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
It's not on Batman's radar that he just fought a werewolf. He just thinks it's like, oh man, that was a very tough, breaking and entering type fella with a mask on.
Yeah,
we know.
I mean, the story is called Moon of the Wolf story. Yeah, we know. Which it's then also great because the next scene, he's in Gordon's office, and then it just he just has this basically this view of, what if our wolf-like prowler is not wearing a mask?
Yes, with the
Classic
full moon shining in through the window.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we get a bit of a backstory here of this is an Olympian, Anthony Lupus, who went to Professor Milo because he was living the good life and training. I don't know exactly what they allude to, because he's driving a boat with women on it, and it says, for with athletic success comes financial good fortune, ... and assorted other fringe benefits.
Benefits, like these ladies on the boat.
Yeah, but then he got a ton of headaches. So I was just like, I kind of wondered in through this of, so are we supposed to alleged, is this implying that he was also, to achieve that, was steroids or something like that, and it's having a backfire? Like, what's causing the headaches?
See, I think for you, and this is where we can kind of do a little bit of the compare and contrast between this and the animated series episode. I think that is you being exposed to the episode, and I was too first, right? But I think that's sort of the imprint of the episode where Anthony Romulus in the episode was going after he wanted to, I think it wasn't the Olympics, it was like the autumn games or something like that. And he was looking for a better competitive edge. Steroids would be too tricky to be caught. So he was looking for this, goes and gets Milo gives him the formula or whatever, right? Potion. In this, it seems to be saying the headaches began because he was suffering from lycanthropy or, werewolfism. And Milo kind of walks you through, you see some people with a lot of hand hair and very furry eyebrows and a heavy beard. That's how it shows up for them. Your case is actually more advanced. In these, your lycanthropy, the only way to solve that is to kind of push it all the way through to its final form. Yeah. So I didn't get the impression that this guy was on the juice. In the animated series, it feels like in general, their Anthony is the less sympathetic character because he's looking out to cheat, in his profession, and it is being a little bit underhanded. I just thought this guy was suffering from something and was trying to go around looking for doctors to help him fix it, not that he was on the juice.
So I've been inceptioned.
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
And I don't even remember it. I just assume.
Animated episode within the comic, within the dream. And then the spinner just keeps spinning.
So, okay. I mean, that fits. That works for me.
Which I think is a little bit where in the animated series, it's a little bit more of, I don't want to say cheesy, but a little bit more of your on the nose, bad guys are bad, good guys are good, quick 22-minute animated show. And in the comic book, it's a little bit more gray. This guy's a little bit more sympathetic. He didn't go
exactly.
out. Yes. He's a little less deserving of his precarious situation.
He's looking for help basically at these headaches, and nobody's got an answer until he gets to Mr. Bullcut, in which how he'd even said that Milo's potions and brews tasted no less foul than those of his predecessors, but they were more effective. But then it ramped up the lycanthropy into where more and more, and he's going back to him I need a cure because it's getting worse. And what does he say, as all old school classic villains even say, I want you to murder someone for me. I want you to kill the Batman.
Right.
Ba-bum-bum. So then as you do, you go to Bruce Wayne and you're like, hey, can you get me to meet up with the Batman?
Yeah.
And Bruce is like, sure.
And a little bit of the hokiest part of this. And I think, Len Wein's a great writer and wrote the animated series episode as well.
Yeah.
But in this, it's pretty clunky where it's like, hey, Anthony, oh gosh, now I'm forgetting. What is it in the book? Lupus. Anthony Lupus in the book just so happens, because he's a top tier athlete and very wealthy, is pals with Bruce Wayne, because Bruce Wayne, of course, is, a guy that works out and is very wealthy.
And this older, out of shape dude.
And this who was replaced with a young, attractive, fit woman in the animated series, right? They just happen to be at the gym together, and non-intentionally, Anthony's talking about, oh yeah, I want to meet Batman and give him this big donation check because I'm looking for a tax loophole. Oh, the evil rich looking for their loopholes, right? They're always trying to save a buck. And then Bruce Wayne's just like, oh, what a useful bit of information I've stumbled across, being that I am Batman and would like to help charity. Sure, let's do it up.
And he says, as they leave, I think he'll find you. Next page. And not too much later. Who? The Batman, says Lupus. Afternoon, Mr. Lupus. I hear you have something for me, because that's not suspicious at all.
My close personal friend, who also happens to have my exact same build, jawline, and voice. And
everybody knows I'm a creature of the night, but here we are in the afternoon. Hey, sir, here I am.
It sure love that check.
Though? Ween and Adams are like, we don't have time to really flesh this out.
Not what we're doing here. Yeah, we got to get to the wolf. The meat of the story is Batman punching werewolves.
Yeah.
Not tax evasion.
We can't wait. And then I think eventually DC understood that there's just such a great idea there with tax evasion and stories. And so really started to flesh that stuff out. Let's make this a focal point.
Right.
Yeah,
it's a different label. DC : IRS.
Yeah. It's the villain IRS.
Yeah.
There you go. In the comic, it's spelled IRS. But anyways, story progresses. Lupus again turns into a werewolf. He attacks Professor Milo, in which, in this, the assumption is, to me, in this comic by itself, that Milo died. Even though we didn't necessarily see it, it's kind of implied that way. But if you look in DC history, Milo, of course, pops up in later comic books. So I guess that's not, you can believe it if you want to self-contain it. Batman, meanwhile, was passed out in Lupus's penthouse and then chained, basically getting served up to the werewolf at the end. And there's a big thunderstorm, lightning storm showdown between the bat and the wolf, in which it's at a construction site. We'll come back and touch on some of these moments. I'm just getting through, and Batman throws this metal rod through him, in which then lightning strikes, and the wolf falls,
evaporates. Maybe
only the rod is left,
mm-hmm.
in which is and then there's a quick little epilogue in which you see that Lupus is with the Alaskan wolves, that the timber wolves, Minnesota. Oh my gosh!
Oh
It's all
my
connected!
gosh! It's all connected.
The Timberwolves, which was alluded to earlier in the story by Gordon, that there were some Timberwolves stolen from the Gotham Zoo.
Right.
So on the 3 nights of the cold full moon, it is said the wolf pack still runs thicker by one, and that one has the shape of a man. Bum bum bum. So okay, 20-page story. It moves right along. I think that it is. Okay, so also in comparing the two, in which this is an audio only, but I'm gonna show you, Garrett, so that you can tell the people that I was not a liar. That there isn't much difference, surprisingly, even with the coloring. So I know that you were recently Chris Clow. I don't know. I haven't gotten to listen to it on the comic binge. You were on the comic binge with the professor himself, Chris Clow. He has a much better haircut than Milo.
Oh, he does.
But I think he might have talked about like re-releasing of reprints and coloring being completely different. And he even compared and contrasted of like in an original Batman comic, he was blue, and in a reprint or collected edition or something, it was gray. I don't know if that was mentioned on the binge or if you just tweeted that out. So there's a little
bit of both. Both. Yep. And that one is actually a bigger one. So that one is New 52 in a flashback story. When the book came out, the flashback had Batman in his New 52 costume still. When it was collected and reprinted, they swapped it out to the 70s kind of Neal Adams style costume. Gotcha. And Paul Herman, also of the binge, of course, had a panel from Man of Steel where you could almost everything it looked almost like it had been re-inked. The textures looked different. The colors were totally changed. So yeah, but that was a topic of conversation.
Okay. There's just 2 instances that I see where it's noticeable, and one is in the construction fight at the end of the wolf. It's kind of too dark here. It's almost a little bit of like a reddish brown.
Yeah.
Where in the Neal Adams book, it's just like a flat out brown.
Sure.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to show you to see if it even.
I can see it. Yep.
A little bit, and then there's also when Batman saves the woman, out of the building. The sky in the Neal Adams version is definitely blue. It's just a regular blue background. Whereas in the Len Wein collection, stand by. This is riveting radio. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. I don't know why I'm doing that theme. It's like got a purple to it. So not drastic, but I mean, just the smallest of change, which doesn't necessarily impact, but it does make me wonder of more. Give me like the look of like an original issue and coloring. I do love the pages. So it's a glossy version print in the Len Wein collection. It's more of like a thick construction paper for the Neal Adams collection. Those are like the only coloring differences that I see in the entire issue between the two. So that's good. I do think that Adams's art is, I mean, I can't say anything that hasn't been said before. I think it's strikingly awesome.
It's amazing.
For a monster story like this.
Yeah.
This is like, I know I already said it, but like this is Batman in the Universal Monsters age completely. Yeah. I almost wish that this would have just been an Elseworlds story, and instead it did take place in the time of the Wolfman. Like I forget which exact like decade in the 1800s that's supposed to take place or whatever, but because I think that Adams could have done some really awesome stuff at the time with Batman, like that setting of a werewolf story.
Yeah, I mean, the art is fantastic. I think besides just drawing a heck of a werewolf, Adams is, I mean, no one else was doing sort of anatomy in the way Adams was. Like, yeah, it's comic realism, but it's still very realistic, from the musculature to the body movements. There's so much Neal Adams, I think, in early to mid 90s, like image books, like even to how he draws a number of the female characters here with their profile, like J. Scott Campbell kind of feels like there's some of that. And I mean, there's just like those that Gen 13 storyline feels like the female characters feel like Neal Adams characters just push 20 years further on. They're not, Neal wasn't quite as voluptuous or, sexualized as some of that Image stuff got. But it just feels so fresh and so modern compared to other things that were being drawn in the 70s. And that's why, Neal's Neal and has the reputation and the career that he's had. But the fight scenes are fantastic. It's everything you would want from this storyline, right? Like there's a little bit of clunky, how do we get there in the story? But it knows this, it knows what it wants to be. It wants to be, Batman slugging it out with this werewolf, meeting a challenge that can challenge him back. And then what happens there? It's a beautifully drawn book.
Absolutely. And I think it's something that it took me because I haven't actually read this issue in a while. And I'm really glad that I love pretty much it's like all the books that people choose to talk about. And then sometimes it is refreshing especially when it's been like the spooky months, because it is just one issue, because I have enough time that I can read it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Which makes it really nice. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can read this over and over before recording. And it's been a while since I've read this one. And let's see, page 1, 2, 3, 4. The layouts for when Batman swoops and gets the woman, saves the woman. And it took me a second to try and to understand like the placement of it. It's like he drew one massive panel swooping, like Batman swoops down, because he even says, oh, Batarang slowed us down enough to save us. And they're falling so high that he grabs her and then gets like the Batarang for the the bat rope, whatever, swoops down and gets her. And then you can see that what's covered up then by 2 large panels is swinging with her back up to land on top of a building.
Right.
And I really love that whole page, and because it makes it feel like there's a lot of movement in a still image.
Yeah, it's really fluid. And then getting her back down, like around the main panels on the page is Batman bringing her back down from the roof, right? Like, so you sort of see this movement on the prior page of werewolf throws woman out window, Batman dives out window, Batman reaches out to woman through the window, falling to the ground, Batarang up, they swoop up, you see them land on the roof. But then it's also like he's bringing her back down, if you look at it too. So you sort of get this whole like out of the window, up to the roof, down from the roof to the ground, lay you here safely, away we go.
And I really wish I hadn't put my Batcave companion away, because there's a massive interview, Michael Cronenberg, which he was on here to talk about it, that he had with Neal Adams. I think Adams talked about like this and this era and stuff. I mean, that's like a great example of doing something that most others were not.
Right.
Like there's a lot of very standard, oh yeah, it's a panel on a page, hero standing, oh look at, yep, he punched said hero, I need to save her, next panel is I saved her. And this definitely just feels like you're seeing it, even though you're not necessarily seeing it, you're seeing every frame of the save.
Right. Yeah, that era of comic books was really sort of classic for your panels are a series of still shots, as if someone took a camera and just snapped photos of characters in poses and then fit those, like, okay, so this panel needs to be this, so stand still and pose like this, and then maybe we'll introduce some speed lines or whatever. Adams did so much fluid movement and some really, really unique for the time panel placement and planning. So where you mentioned earlier the scene where Batman is in Commissioner Gordon's office, they're having a conversation and he's looking out the window and he sees the full moon. Yeah, that's not in your sort of, a lot of this isn't, but that page in particular isn't in your sort of standard boxed out panels and you see little snapshots. You have overlays on top of pictures where the reader, you naturally understand that this is the next panel, but when you look at the way it's drawn, it's overlays of moments on top of other moments that lead to a really fluid visual eye following the storytelling, and it's not broken up in a traditional way. We might be used to that more today. And actually, I think now we're starting to see more of this callback to the 9-panel grids and stuff. Like artists are kind of getting back into the retro thing. But in the 70s, this was like groundbreaking, wild stuff, right? He is really advancing the medium.
You know what? I think you are a bit of a professor yourself.
No,
A student of Professor Clow. That was very astute.
That's
I think that's
fine.
great, great points too. Because I mean, for that page that you're just talking about, Batman with the moon, and it's like also you turn in 2 pages later, is Milo is that centerpiece of the entire story, which should be kind of broken up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panels. But instead, there is no direct like, oh yeah, this is the clear boxed panel for each portion. So it is like the layouts. Yeah, the layouts are different than I think the standard at the time. And I think, yeah, absolutely applaud Adams in how much say, because at this point, I mean, according to like, you know, the Neal Adams illustrated or the Batman illustrated stuff, it's like this issue. Yeah, this followed in this book, Joker's 5-Way Revenge. So that must mean Batman 252, 253, 254 were not illustrated by Neal Adams. So this is kind of after he'd done the big Denny O'Neil run and everything. So I think at this point, it had to be like Adams, you know, King Adams at this time,
right,
that he had a say in how layouts and all that stuff would be. So I applaud. He had the balls.
Oh yeah, no,
like, I'm doing it this way. It's going to be different and impactful, and he nailed it.
The page you're talking about, at least in the digital, is page 8. In the layering on of sort of Milo as the narrator, center page, main focus of your eye, and the rest of the panels, because they're not traditional grid panels, they're sort of swooped in where their memories, the edges are rounded. The modern, the time that the story is taking place that is not back in the memory is squared off. The rest of it is memory, and the panel design is a little bit more like cloudy or swooping, right? Like the fog of memory. Like it is genius from a design standpoint. And it's, you know, if you want to say that's professorial, if I can be a student of Clow, I'll take that as a badge of honor. The one place reading this book, it's funny that you bring up Clow in the comic bilge thing I did. Because one of the topics we got into, Clow's not a fan of thought balloons. And I kind of like them because you don't see them very often. So I enjoy when I'm back into a back issue that has them. I think in this book in particular, it was an effective use of thought balloons, which were the standard for the time and now are not, of conveying information. But this actually does a nice job of using kind of first person narration through Milo as he is sort of talking about the transition of his interaction with Anthony, as well as Batman using the thought balloons early on in the story. And then later in the story, when he is in the midst of battle with a werewolf, because this werewolf, you know, from everything we see, is not a creature of great vocabulary might, right? It's not. So Batman is having this conversation for the benefit of the reader through a thought balloon. You could do that with a third person narrator. I like getting in the mind of the hero a bit more. So that was kind of fun to go back and get a little bit of that from a nice 70s comic book as well.
Yeah. Well said. The vial, a few pages later. So this is after we see, just a couple pages later, as Anthony is meeting with Milo, and you know, and when Milo says, "I want you to murder someone for me. I want you to kill the Batman," and it is, you see Anthony's reflection in the vial. I think that's really cool. A cool, distorted, exactly as you'd imagine, reflection of somebody, you know, with glass or, you know, a liquid or something like that, which like that's a little bit of a standout for me. Right. I was going to comment that Batman in Gordon's office, it's just one page, that had such an animated series vibe to me.
Totally.
Which had a, you know, people watching it then had a 70s Batman vibe to them. So it's like, it's full circle. But I definitely thought of that, of like how him just appearing in his office in the shadows and stuff is great.
And it's great because I think, you know, I said earlier, I just sort of kept reading on the digital, you know, on DCUI, and it's when you go back and see, you know, 50s Commissioner Gordon and how differently depicted he was over the years. it's really when we get into this run in Neal's impact on not just Batman, but the sort of cast of characters around Batman is felt, because this Gordon is kind of what became Gordon ever since, right? Like to varying different degrees. But if you were to, again, watch the animated series first and go back and read this, the familiarity isn't just there with the storyline. It's like, oh yeah, that feels like what that animated series Gordon would look like in a comic book too, right? Like it's his fingerprints are deep all over the character and the assorted supporting characters around him.
I'm trying to see, like, I don't necessarily have. Well, okay, since we're still talking about like with the art and stuff. I think the showdown at the end is awesome. I think how he does the rain is great. The lightning, like all those images. I think the fight between the two is long enough, doesn't overstay its welcome, but I don't feel shortchanged either. I think it's just really cool visuals, and that's kind of all that I was really asking for.
Yeah, it's quick, it's punchy, it's the interaction. It doesn't wear out its welcome, right? So it's not just a slugfest. Batman's using his wits to say, hey, on the ground, I'm not a match for this beast, but what if I, climb up and slink around in the shadows on top of a building? What can I do up there? So, there's more to it than just punch, kick, bar through the chest. But, it's not overly today. This would be the second issue would be front to back, that whole fight, everything. This would probably be a 3-part story, and the fight would be the third issue, the whole issue long. This was nice. It didn't overstay its welcome, which is hard to do. Batman fighting werewolves. I mean, come on, but it's snappy, which is fun.
It would maybe be, oh my gosh, Batman, Lupus's blood got into Batman, and Batman's a werewolf now.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Jump the shark.
Yep. I don't have anything negative to say about the story from Ween's perspective, because it's a pretty, what you expect is what you get. So like in that, I'm glad that there wasn't any, I don't want to say there wasn't ambition. That's not the right phrasing, but there wasn't striving of like, let's do something that no one's ever done before and really try to, I don't know, something that's really too far-fetched, because you're already with something a little far-fetched. So it's like, let's just give what we're promising, give what we're selling.
Yeah, they know what it is.
Exactly. So I'm completely fine with that. I really do like the fact that Ween was able to write the animated series episode as well. Yeah, I think that kind of does it for me, unless there's something else you really want to touch on. The star of it is Adams's art.
Absolutely.
And it looks great.
Absolutely. And you know what? I actually prefer this more good-natured, tragic circumstance, not a cheat, and also handsome. Like that's another thing that the animated series changed. Like Anthony Romulus is not the handsome cat that Anthony Lupus is. Like Anthony Lupus, I mean, that's like a hunk, right? That's a handsome, good looking dude that doesn't seem like he has evil intent. So of course, when they make him more of the cartoony bad guy, he's got to have a very evil, intimidating unibrow and a little bit sharper, angrier features and the whole deal.
I mean, the rest, as soon as you bring in the unibrow, the rest is irrelevant. It's like, oh man, come on.
Evil.
Yeah.
That's an evil dude for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, and I also don't always need sympathy for my villains. Sometimes it's like, just give me a villain and
just give me a bad guy.
So
that's fine.
That's a way to differentiate the two a little bit more. And yeah, definitely, as we already said, we both said this, he's sympathetic in the comic book and not so much in the cartoon. And that does help a little bit better with the story and leaves the story's resolved, but it's not completely finished, I guess, because it can go on in your head because now he's in Alaska.
Yeah, and this poor guy is still out there suffering from werewolfism, and who knows when he could be a threat again, even though he doesn't want to. Like, there's more in a cartoon, in a cartoon aimed at younger viewers. You don't necessarily need that kind of gray matter in the story. In the comic book, I think it works well. This isn't, I mean, not to say this is like a big thought provoking, very cerebral story. It's still Batman punching werewolf. But it's kind of nice that, like, hey, in your mind, it can go on, and there's more tension than just Batman punch werewolf.
Yes. Did you happen to listen to Bad Moon Rising while reading this?
No, I listened.
Oh,
I
okay.
actually listened to the Batman score while I read this.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect. That score fits.
Halloween, it's right there.
Yeah, you can't find City Halloween. Anyways, Garrett, let's hop into some favorites.
Absolutely.
What was your favorite part of Moon of the Wolf?
My favorite part was Batman in Commissioner Gordon's office. I thought it was just so much fun. Because the interaction was great. It was kind of fun to see. Now, I do like Batman being the smartest person in the room, but I've said it on this show. I've said it on my show or Bill's show, however you want to phrase that. I don't like Bat God. I don't like when Batman has everything all figured out and he's got a plan for the plan for the plan, and he instantly has assessed every situation and solved every problem. So I thought it was nice to get Batman partnering with Commissioner Gordon to review what's up, review different information, kind of work through the thing and come to this conclusion. In the animated series, he does that with Alfred a bit as well. But I really like that interaction because I love the partnership. And I think I'll wait on that because we're going to have a very similar answer for your next question that I know is coming. Yeah.
Okay. I think my favorite part is the opening.
Yeah.
I do just kind of like the Batman spots the monster creeping up the side of the building. I think that's a cool opening visual. And instead of that is 2 close-ups of the victim and the predator. And yeah, I mean, I don't like the dog dies. R.I.P. Ralph. But
or maybe he's just paralyzed and he can have a happy but less abled life. Who knows?
I like that. Let's go with that route.
Silver
and I mean,
line.
it is just a nice quick tease of Batman, of what's to come of Batman versus the werewolf. So, I mean, I do like that. And by that, I mean, it ends with the swooping saving of the woman, because that image itself is also really, really great. So yeah, the opening for me. Garrett, my next question that you think I'm going to ask, we'll see if it's true. Boxers or briefs?
Boxer briefs. I like to split the difference.
Okay. How about a favorite panel of Moon of the Wolf?
Yeah, I talked about it already. It's in Batman in Commissioner Gordon's office. Batman's looking out the window. Gordon is sort of walking around, looking at the file, head in the other direction. So I think this is probably technically 2 panels, but it's the bottom third of the page. These 2 panels sort of overlap with Batman as the central figure and the smaller panel to the right looking out the window. I just thought the overlay and the continuing from one panel to the other, but pulling Batman more into the foreground to focus on him and his big realization of maybe this isn't a mask. I just thought it was a beautifully drawn panel, or 2 panels merged together. If I'm going to cheat, if I wasn't going to do that, it'd be the full page with Milo in the middle, recounting the history of the interactions with Anthony. But I'm going to go with Batman because it's a Batman show.
I think that's almost got a little, man, I almost feel like a little Aparo Batman.
Yeah.
Him looking out the window to that is a really good shadowed Batman.
Yeah,
mine.
All this, the shading and the use of light with the big bright full moon out the window. Mm-hmm. Of course, we see the other side of Batman's face, because who doesn't want to draw Batman draped in a silhouette? It's just fantastic.
It is. Mine comes towards the end when at the construction fight, when the werewolf lunges at Batman.
Yeah.
And that's a great horror image there. The lightning strikes. He's a little in shadow, but he's also, you can see in his eyes are all white and the fangs are there, and you think Batman's so screwed, and then somehow headbutts him backwards.
Yeah.
Don't care. He's Batman. He finds a way.
He's flexible and very strong. That panel was also in the running for me, Lauer, as was the panel that just precedes it on the previous page, where you see the back of the werewolf is to the viewer. You see just hulked out back with back hair everywhere, and Batman's, standing his ground, ready to take on this assault.
He's the true hero that he is.
I can't pick one, so I just cheat and mention a bunch of my answer.
That counts. And then finally, We all know, if you're listening to this, we all know that there is an animated adaptation of this comic book. I think we've kind of said it. How do you feel about that episode?
Oh, I love it. It's a great one. Because this was a short little read, I actually read it, watched the episode, and then I read it again. And it was kind of fun to go back and forth. If you were to ask me, would I like to see an animated version of it? I would love to do what you said earlier and get maybe an 80-minute animated series of Batman in the 1850s or whenever the story is supposed to take place, and do a period piece and really, really drain this thing for everything it's worth. I think that could be really fun.
There's an Elseworld story. You are aware of it. It's called Castle of the Bat.
Yeah. Frankenstein-esque, right?
That's a Frankenstein-esque. Yes, they should definitely do something like that and make it completely werewolf.
Dude, they could do 4 movies set in the 1800s, focused on classic Universal monster movies.
Monsterverse.
Batman, Dracula, Batman, Frankenstein, Batman, werewolf, doing whatever.
Yep, I'm with you. My pal Garret Grev, do you have any final thoughts?
No, everybody should read this. And
I thought you were gonna leave it at that. No, everybody should read this. Bye.
Everybody should read this because it's fun and it's great for this time of year.
Yes.
And if you are a fan that's gotten into Batman, more recently, maybe you're a big fan of the New 52 Snyder stuff, and that's where you spend most of your time, go back and check this stuff out. I think you'll be amazed at how modern and fresh this era of Batman is, whether it's Neal doing the art, whether it's Aparo that was doing the art, like a little bit later, but there is such great work where I think sometimes in the year of our Lord 2022, some readers of current comic books can look back and say, stuff from back then was just kind of cheesy and the art wasn't very good yet. Nah, man, there's some stuff in the 70s that'll knock your socks off. Check it out.
Maybe you're talking the 50s and the 60s, but the 70s is where you need to go.
It's where things really changed.
I co-sign everything that you just said. If you haven't read it, even though if you've watched the cartoon, go back and read the comic. It's very easy to find. Basically anywhere you want to look for comics, you should be able to find it in some.
The Luther College Library in Decorah, Iowa had it.
Yeah, take a field trip.
Yeah.
Go there and you'll see it, and you'll be able to read the same copy that one Garret Grev also read.
Like, is this nacho cheese Dorito dust on these pages? Where'd this come from? Whoa.
Oh, look at that. A Minnesota Vikings bookmark, right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Who'd have thunk?
Garret, thank you for coming back to the show and helping me kick off this spooky month. It's my favorite time of year. It is.
Happy to be
here.
It.
So thank you. I appreciate it. And you'll be back again in the future as long as we remain friends. So universe don't screw that up.
Yeah. And if you want, Laura, I had an idea, just because every time I hear the intro to your show, I get a kick out of the nerdy subjects we all like to frolic about.
Okay.
All your Halloween guests, we should film videos of us like frolicking through a graveyard, holding our copies, and you can intercut them for a promo video for Spooky Month.
Let me check the budget.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you on that.
I don't know where the closest graveyard is. I don't generally visit them, but I bet I could find one. Or just like maybe a spooky looking forest.
We can create one.
Yeah.
All we need is just a small space in the woods.
Grass, some cardboard cutouts for headstones. Away
Done.
We go.
I like it.
We're just
frolicking. Would you like to plug away at anything?
Sure. Why not? It's football season. If you like me talking about Batman, maybe you'd like me talking about football.
Yeah.
You can check me out at the Dynasty Dads podcast, which I co-host with my friend Matt Renshaw. Easiest way to find us is just over on Twitter at Dynasty Dads. If you like talking Batman, you don't like the football so much, or maybe you like both, but you just like some extra Batman, check out the Batman on Film podcast, which I host. And there's a bunch of other great episodes of various incarnations of Batman and Film podcasts that are on that same feed. So you get all of it in one nice little spot. If you just want to hear me or read my thoughts on, I don't know, various subjects. I cyberbullied RG3 this week. I don't feel good about that. I do, but I have to pretend that I don't because I'm Minnesota nice. You can follow me over on Twitter. I am at Garret Wato. That is at GarretWato. And, I'm a chatty guy. You can come chat with me. That'd be fun.
Skull. As for the Batman Book Club, you can follow on Twitter and Instagram at the Batman BC for upcoming episodes. Like what else is coming and when with this spooky month on the feed. Make sure you go to YouTube and subscribe to the Batman Book Club YouTube channel, where I'm on the road to no man's land with this guy we keep talking about, Peter R. Vera. Videos are there. More upcoming videos are on the docket. So pay attention to that if you can. If you want to support the show, a variety of ways you can do it. Number one is, like I said at the top of the show, patreon.com/thebatmanbc. Number two, if you want to support some Batman Book Club merchandise, tpublic.com. But lastly, if you want to support the show and you don't want to spend any money at all, that's 100% A-okay. Just rate and review the show wherever you listen to it, whatever podcast feed, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, iHeartRadio, anything. Just rate and review the show, because the more reviews the show gets, the more it helps spread the word. And as we all know, the word is panic. So for the Minnesota Timberwolf himself, Garrett, I am Ryan Lauer. And until next time, remember, guys.